Hey, does anyone else? And how about play the hydrant? How about just get it over the edge? Okay, we're not gonna make it this time. But I do appreciate the people uh, who did help out. Yeah. Uh, hmm. Any which way. What? They're still going strong. In Discord. Oh shit! Then I'm gonna jump back in.
I might go along with because I don't know or whatever because it's fucking who cares whatever. Or I'm not gonna sort of as much because I might not be as comfortable doing it. All right, whatever. Whereas with like a relationship partner, I might be more particular. Like, hey, I don't like this particular thing. Or I don't want to do this thing. Right? That's why I'm saying like the conversations that happen within like romantic or committed or relationships where there's a high level of trust is a lot different than the types of sexual relationships that are inherently more risky that are like casual sexual hookups, like one night stands
Mm.
I
more specifically.
understand why you have that perspective, but I also think it's way, way more skewed than how it actually is in reality in terms of how things actually happen. I think there's a lot more stakes to not verbalize your needs because you're in a committed relationship, because you want to make your partner happy, not
Yeah, but
because
I
you're
would have the
scared
same
of them.
position about all of those. I would say all of that is bad too. You shouldn't do any of that either.
Well, what do you mean by that? Because we
So
already
you're saying
agreed
that
that
people
women
who
are
just
socialized to
so
please,
Yeah,
right?
do you think that
if you're not capable of asserting strong boundaries, then I think that's something you should learn to do before you engage in sexual relationship. If it's in a
But you
relationship, then
keep
fine.
vacillating into that. And then you go, okay, you can establish boundaries. And this woman has, for example, with a condom. And then you're saying, well, it's not just about that you establish boundaries. It's also about that a guy is going to keep pushing and testing your boundaries. And you have to endure that and continuously call it out.
You
And
have to
that
be
is
able
when
to,
the
yes.
burden, no, but that's the shift of the burden where then you're asking too much of one side.
The
You're
burden is
saying the
always going to
guy's just
be
going to do that.
the burden is almost always going to be on the woman because of how reality is, because of the power dynamics of the
Yeah, that's
situation.
but that's what's fucked up about what
That's
you're saying.
reality. It's also fucked up that women are the only ones that can give birth, but there's no way to get around that. It's shit. I wish that it was more even.
Women biologically giving birth is not the same as toxic rape culture
It
causing men to
absolutely is. It
it
is.
it is the most infantilizing. How do you not get that you're infantilizing men by saying what you're saying?
I'm not
You're saying
infantil
men
I'm
are literally not
what I'm
capable
saying
of
is that
being less rapey.
what
That's
I'm
what you're
saying is that
saying.
what I'm saying is that I have never been in a circumstance with a woman where I felt like she could push my boundary and I could beat the shit out of her if she was going to try to rape me ever. But in every single scenario where I've been in a sexual relationship with a guy and he's trying to push my boundaries, that is always a consideration I have to make because when a man confronts a man, there's an implicit level of like there's going to be a violent confrontation if shit gets crazy. But with a
Yeah.
woman, they're typically way smaller. It's not something you have to worry about. This is
And
a
then your
sexual dynamic. Hold on,
solution
wait.
is to
This
segregate
no,
women.
no, that's not my solution. I'm just saying that that is a sexual dynamic that exists. Okay, that coupled with the fact
It
that
can
men seem to
change.
put it. I don't know if it can. This is the issue. I don't know if it's ever going to be the case, but we live in a society where men are like, oh God, dude, there's like so many women pressuring me for sex all the time, and I just can't. Like, guys will go out on the street and fuck like a hooker with no fucking teeth that are just trying to fuck you if you have like 2 drinks. Guys
Then
are in a way different mindset for sex than women are, generally speaking. We can't
what I'm
pretend
telling you
otherwise.
is we don't need to pretend otherwise. But what I was asking you to acknowledge the entire time is that if what you're saying is true, then by default you are admitting that you are asking more of women. You are literally saying
Yes, I
men are
am.
not
Yes, I
capable.
am. I
But
am.
you
Yes.
never said that on the panel. You
What?
never said
Because
that
you
was
didn't
the
ask me this particular
entire
question.
point. That was the entire point of this panel. The fact that people were criticizing you for unfairly asking more of women. That was the entire point.
If in any scenario where there is a hypothetical victim, you are always like the bigger demand is going to be on the victim. If somebody's breaking into somebody's house with a gun and they're trying to kill their family, the bigger demand is going to be on the people to protect their family. Of course, that you're in the defensive scenario against an aggressor. There's always going to be a bigger demand on you to protect yourself. What do you mean?
Yeah. Okay, I think a lot of people would then look at that situation and would say, that's pretty fucked. We need to change the aggressor, not the defender,
How?
right?
Are you gonna make women bigger? Are we gonna get Chloe to give HRT to all the fucking
No,
women in the world so they get jacked?
but
What do you
but
mean?
this is the thing, right? Because you think you're the one complaining about people telling women this guy's gonna bash your head and shit. I've been through a lot of sexual experiences. It was never because I was worried the guy's going to overpower me. That's not the most cases where that happens. Women say yes to things. Women don't know what they like. Women don't know what they want. They're not asked to know what they want. They're not asked to set boundaries. They're not asked to learn any of that. So we can teach all of that to women. But what you're doing, you're saying men are always going to be like this. And I agree with you that they'll always be like this, but they can be less like this.
Maybe they can be. And that's why we tell men not to rape. We
That
try to have a better conversation about
matters.
it. Maybe they can be, but right now that's not the case. And when you're giving advice to women right now going out to have sex, it has to be for the men that exist right now in the world. It can't be for the men that we want to exist in the future.
Why would I give advice to the women where the men are the one that needs to be properly educated?
If you were going into any scenario where there are a bunch of potential aggressors, you're not going to give advice to the aggressors. You're going to give the advice to the people that need to protect themselves from the aggressors.
Okay, but that's how you're acting from how the world is, right? But
Yes.
you're trying to enact change. And the way you choose to weigh your power and your influence is to enact change in a way that is unfair to the defender, to the victim, instead of using your influence and power to try to change the perpetrator.
No,
Because you
I
think
do both.
so much less of the perpetrator.
We talk about all the sides of this so often. I've talked about this from the male side so much more often. But the one time or the few times I talk about the female side, people lose their mind.
You're literally saying right now, I expect less of men. Men will never change. Men will always be like this. So you can talk
No,
about
I didn't say we'll
enthusiastic
always.
consent and all that great shit, and that's nice. But if you're gonna do the boys will be boys thing, then yeah, that's not a very strong message. I can ask men to do better and be more aware while
That
also
doesn't help
doing whatever
women
I need
right
to do.
now. That doesn't help women right now entering the dating
You
market.
know what also doesn't help women right now? Being told that they should be excluded from certain behaviors.
No, that
Because
absolutely does help. Somebody hearing that, because there's this huge sexual revolution that's happened where women feel more empowered to have more casual sex than they've ever. They feel more empowered to get out and do these types of things. But with great power comes great responsibility. And we haven't talked about some of those responsibilities related to pursuing these sexual relationships at all. And we have shitty conversations about
what do
sexual
you
relationships.
mean?
As in,
I
we don't
understand
have
that
good
you
conversations.
didn't have these
They
conversations
don't
because
happen
you're.
publicly. They don't happen. All they are is don't get raped. Or I'm sorry. All they are is tell men not to get raped. Tell
Why
men
do
not to
they
get raped.
not
Tell men to get
happen
raped.
publicly?
Because it's just not because it's victim blaming. Because people get mad like this.
Why? Why
Because
do they do
because
that?
the owner should be on. Because there's agency on one side of the transaction, and people view responsibility synonymously with fault. So if somebody does something wrong, they must also have 100% responsibility to not do something wrong. And if you
Okay.
tell somebody that a wrong was enacted against, that they could have had some responsibility, or they could have had some agency, or did something different, people ascribe fault to that person instead.
So I think that if you're going to claim, I want to treat the world how it is right now, we need to address the world as it is right now. The problem with the world right now is not that women are being irresponsible, is that men are perpetrating in higher rates than they could be, right?
True.
So you
Yes.
yes, so that's why in public discourse we want to address the perpetrators. And
No,
I
we
should
address both sides. Always. You always have to hit this from both sides. It can't just be one. You
you
address the men that
can't
are doing it, that are pieces of shit, or they just don't know better, need to get checked.
I didn't
But
want to do this on the panel, but it's what you're saying right now. Oh, and you're liberal. You might actually agree with this. It's kind of like telling black people that they should do their best to behave with police because that will somehow save their lives.
I
And
say that
sure,
all the time. You should
yeah,
say that. You
that's
absolutely
insane.
should. It's not insane.
Do
And
you think they
you know
don't
what?
know
Hold on.
that?
Do you want to know what group of people? And I will say this from personal experience, and I know it's fucking true. And I know, I don't know if Prime will back me up on this, okay? Or he's a fucking liar, okay? Or he doesn't have that experience for other reasons, which in case I'm sorry, okay? Do you know which group of people says to black people more than any other fucking group of people in the entire United States, do not fuck with cops. When a cop tells you to do some shit, follow directions. The people that say this the most are black fathers. That's who will
Good.
tell people more than anybody else,
Yeah,
don't
that's
fuck with
having the
cops, it's not
talk,
worth it.
right?
Yes. So when you have these situations where there are even situations that can be unfair, like police officers and black people, and there absolutely are these situations, we can still tell people on both ends, yeah, the criminal justice shit shouldn't happen, but black people also fucking chill around cops, be as chill as you can, treat them
Can
like
you
insane psychopathic killers. That's what you have to do.
Okay, can you hear me out? We're
I can
talking
hear you.
about the public space right now. Black fathers, there's no like black father discourse where people are telling black people they should be compliant with police. Most public discourse, and I think you'll say righteously so, is targeting police brutality, as it should be. Black fathers are doing it the same way that my dad told me not to wear that dress going to that specific area because it will be dangerous. And I told him, but that's not right. I'm allowed to dress however I want. And he said, do you want to be safe or do you want to be right? And trust me, maybe you don't feel like that because it's not talked publicly, but if you think there are women out there, there aren't a lot of men of them who would go, no, I just I want to be raped. I'm just gonna do the right thing. If I be raped, whatever. That's not true, and you know that. The discourse, the public discourse, cannot be about what women need to do more. Women are already doing
Why can't
so
it be?
much.
No, they're not.
You're asking.
It's dog shit. Women are dog shit at keeping themselves safe. And I don't think there's enough conversation publicly around like what can happen to like make it so
No,
people are
no,
more
no.
safe.
You think that
I
because
know
your
that.
salute. No, I didn't finish. You think what you do because you think that your solutions are better. And when they're not doing those solutions, they're doing a dog shit job. But what you're asking women is like, there's a lot of ways that I could keep myself safer. I could never walk alone. I could always carry a gun with me and pepper spray. I can always talk on the phone when I'm on the street at all times. There are millions of things that we can do. But if we just keep listing down the things that women are doing, women are already not walking alone at night. Women are already having rape whistles. Women are already dressing appropriately. Women are already trying not to send flirty looks to guys that they're not actually into. To pretend like that's not true, to pretend like women don't try to defend themselves. When you go and you're like, you hear a woman has been like raped by 3 different guys, I get that upsets you. That
This
upsets
is
me
I
too.
just
But
it's a
I don't
different
think what is fucking wrong with this woman that she got herself into this
the
situation.
problem is the conversations just suck around all of this. I mean, we can have like a whole like every single thing you listed is advice that doesn't work for most people. Not walking
The
alone at night.
advice
Hold
that
on.
you're giving is not having casual sex.
We talk a ton about proactive steps you can take to avoid spicy situations on my stream. We've talked about it a ton, okay? The
Okay.
rape whistle, the having a gun and all that shit, and not sending flirty looks, this is for like the 7% of rapes where it's like a fucking stranger looking to fucking rape you. The vast majority of rapes don't occur here. They occur in scenarios where women just suck at negotiating or communicating consensual interactions during a sexual interaction. And women suck at it, but men suck at it too because they push and push and push. But it's a lot of suckiness on both ends. And you have to push from both ends to fix it. I'm tired of, we've gone in society from like men are expected to make all the moves, all the moves, all the moves, all the moves. We've done that constantly and it's reinforced constantly through romance movies, through culture, through music, through everything else. And now we're telling men, you need to do the exact opposite. And now you've got to take all the responsibility for not raping people. There are movies I don't know if they still release it, I don't watch as many, where men are like creepy rapist fucks, but it's super romantic because the guy is hot. Have you ever seen like The Notebook? Like any of these movies where it would be a creepy fucking scenario if the guy wasn't super hot, but it's okay. These are the messages we've given men all the time. They've got all the control over the relationship and they need to push and push and push. And now
The
we're saying they've
Notebook
got all
is
the
a
control
movie
not to
from
rape.
like the 1990s. It's
Sure,
not
but
that
I mean, I'm
old.
saying that like the modern idea of romance is
I
still
get what you're
is
saying.
guys are supposed to push and push and push and push.
I
But
get
now
what
we're
you're
saying they
saying.
have to push and not rape and be aware of all the boundaries and have all the conversations. And women can't verbalize like it's a lot. There has to be
No,
on both ends. It's a lot to keep in mind. And like we look at a
I
sexual situation too.
agree.
Guys are horny. They're stupid. They don't know what they're supposed to do. They don't want to say something dumb to fuck it up. They don't want to say something that's going to ruin the moment. And you're expecting this guy who's got more blood in his dick than his fucking brain at that moment to be like, I don't think I'm getting enthusiastic consent from this woman. Maybe I need to verbally check in to make sure that the next step of our process, like fucking, that's just,
Okay, so you can empathize with that. But when people tell you, can you imagine a woman in a sexual situation being flustered by suddenly realize that the condom isn't on? And you're like, women are sucky at negotiating. You can understand the pressures that a guy goes through. I can't. That's why I told you I can have a conversation about how women can better communicate. I do it all the I when I was crying to my friends about being triggered about your tweets, I told them, I am the destiny girl. I'm the girl that is like, I'm shitty at communicating my needs. So I don't have sex because I'll get hurt and then they'll get hurt and they'll be blamed for raping me when it's my issue that I can't say no all the time, you know? So I understand what you're saying. But me is not how society I'm not the example of what's good. I'm the example of what's broken. Like, that's not a good thing. And I
Yeah, but
think we
it's
can discuss, like, negotiating and communicating, and it doesn't I understand pushing from both sides, but you're not pushing equally.
I
And the
no.
pushing from both sides cannot be the same type of push.
If I get on stream and I have a 7-hour discourse, or if I go and I tweet 50 million tweets like, men, stop fucking raping, it's disgusting when you do this, blah, 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 I would get soy claps, a million types of, oh my God, this is so great, blah, 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 blah. Nobody, not you, not any other motherfucker would be like, okay, sure, but like, sex takes two people. Women suck sometimes at verbalizing shit, and a lot of women expect you to make all the moves without them fucking saying anything. Isn't that kind of crazy? People are like, you fucking rape apologist, you are a disgusting victim. Boom, boom, boom. That person gets shut the fuck down. When I retweet one thing about like, hey, if you're getting yourself over and over and over again, you can't bring yourself to say anything about this because it's awkward. Maybe you shouldn't have casual sex. Whoa, the whole fucking world collapses.
Okay. So
Like,
can we
the fact that you're
discuss
even saying,
the word rape for a
sure.
little,
The fact that
for
you're
just
even
a second?
saying, like, why can't you have a conversation on both sides? I've probably talked with guys in sex shit and consent shit and stuff across. I think I've even done it on multiple Prime panels. And we've done it on multiple streams of mine. Like, but you don't hear about those conversations. Like, oh yeah, people talk to guys all the time about this shit. But the
Yeah,
second
but
you
you're
mention
also
anything
saying
about
that
women,
women are not having conversations about their
I
responsibilities. And I
don't think they
told
do.
you, I understand. The same way I don't think that you don't think that I do. And yet we both do it. So it's kind of like how you have your perspective and I have mine. And maybe if we just recognized, maybe if
If
you
you shoot me
weren't
your link to
busy
your podcast,
infantilizing women.
if you shoot me the link to your podcast, I would be interested to hear that episode you talked about. But I hope, and I haven't listened to it yet, but I hope that when I listen to it, the whole episode isn't just like how to avoid men the rapists. And we have to be careful because men are going to be raping you all the time. And it's more like here are ways to communicate better during sex to make sure that both people are on the same page. And it's not just something that constantly demonizes the fuck out of men for the entire experience. But I'll listen to it and I'll say, you know what, maybe it will be really good stuff. But it
You
feels like
don't even have to listen to all of it. You can start at 50 minutes is when we start talking about consent. Before that, it is just trauma bonding, I guess.
sure.
It contextualizes it, but yeah, it wouldn't be for you, but for other people, it's a tough listen. Um, I
I just think that
understand.
broadly speaking, and you know what, it might even be the case that it's like, oh, this is a really good conversation. But these conversations seem exceedingly rare. Like the vast majority of the conversation is men don't rape, men don't rape, men don't rape, and any
But
other thing is
we
viewed as like,
both
why are we
agree
telling
that
women?
men don't rape is a shitty take.
It's not
That's not
shitty.
what
It's
me.
good. I mean, like they shouldn't. Well, I mean, it's
Okay.
kind of shitty, but like I'm just saying that for all of these things,
No, no, no.
it has
We
to be
we
pushed to
keep
both
doing
ends.
this thing.
What?
I Most rape that you're concerned about and that you're talking about, it's that accidental rape. It's the
Sure.
stuff I'm worried about.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like men don't rape can be a variety of conversations. Like don't push too hard or whatever. But it depends on how you define it. But sure.
Exactly. That's the thing. Where when you and I are having this discussion right now, where it always triggers me when you talk about like communication in a sexual engagement and then you say, oh, but then like people talk about rape. The second that consent is violated, the second, if you want to talk about violent rape and separating it from other types of rape, fine. If we want to talk about accidental rape, fine. But when we use the word rape, at the end of the day, you are the one that said that it's charged. So when we're framing sexual engagement and then we're inserting the word rape into it, it is no longer a mutual, equal place where a person can assert themselves. I don't think that's a controversial take. If we
But
want to talk about like,
it has to be because if the woman can't assert herself at that point, then she's always going to get raped. Why would we want
wait,
that?
Wait. But again, you're doing the thing. You're only thinking about your type of rape. There is just the regular rape where a guy decides that he's going to fuck you. You
Sure,
know?
this is why I don't use the one word. These are two different things. Obviously, in the violent assault scenario, you don't have as much agency, of course. But
But what I'm trying to say is that we both understand that the alley stranger grabbing you is not a situation. But we also understand that when there is violent rape or rape that is unequivocally when you don't have agency, that happens between friends, that happens at house parties, that happens when people get drunk, it can, it's not uncommon, but I agree that accidental rapes are more common, and I agree that they are a big issue. But I think that you understand that there's a separation between those things, but when you're speaking about it, I can't address what you're talking. I can't engage about accidental rape when there's when we're also talking about just violent rape,
but
like
we nobody here
real
is
rape.
talking about like violent rape, unless you consider stealthing violent rape.
What do you think stealthing is?
When a guy takes off his condom and fucks a woman, what do you mean?
What do you think it morally means?
Morally, it's a bad thing to do. What do you mean?
Okay. So when Spectre was here, he asked you if you think stealthing is tantamount to rape, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
So it's like basically, I think that the way you assess rape is basically what harm does it do? You think that violent rape is bad because it would be painful for the woman and it would also be a very traumatizing experience. And if the girl just had a guy like touch her boobs in her sleep a
But it's
bit
not.
when
Yeah,
it's her
the
boyfriend, you don't want that to be called raped. Rape. I
No,
understand that.
this is the problem, okay? I want to race you in a NASCAR race, okay? And you're asking me like, what do you drive? And I say a car, and it's like, okay, but I mean, like for this race, like, what do you drive? It's like, well, I have a car, and it's like,
I
in this
agree with you.
conversation, hold on, wait. In this conversation, just saying car, do you drive a Toyota Camry or do you have like a machine that is capable of racing on a NASCAR track? We're talking totally different things. So when we're having a specific conversation about stealthing, stealthing is like this much on the rape spectrum. And then you want to call it instead of something you want to say, well, you're raping somebody. Okay. Well, if you're going to ask me like, what should the female response be to stealthing? I can give you a pretty direct answer. But now you're trying to say, but when I give you that and you go, so you think women should respond that way to rape? It's a way broader thing. And now my answer sounds ridiculous. And we're not having a conversation of reality
I
anymore. We're just
understand,
going
which
for
is
clip
why
dunks.
I do think that we need more words. And I think you're a big, influential enough person to be able to introduce those concepts if you
But then
can
why
think
do you
about
keep trying
something.
to ask me, like, do you think stealthing is rape? What is
Wait,
the value in that? Okay.
I'm getting there now. Okay.
Okay.
So I do agree that we don't have enough words. I agree with you on that. You'll hear that if you listen to my podcast. Um, when you talk about stealthing, you seem to either not fully understand or minimize its impact because you're comparing it to rape. And you're like, well, it's this tiny thing at a rape. But this tiny thing can still be a meaningful, hurtful,
Of course.
traumatic,
Yes, it is.
awkward experience. Yes. So when you think about it in the grander context of being grabbed and like violently, brutally raped, it doesn't seem like a big deal. But when you talk about like consensual engagement and then you talk, you know that you wouldn't take your condom off if you agreed on having a condom. So when you say that's shitty behavior, that's rapey and toxic, but that's just going to happen, what am I supposed to do with that? Like,
I'm just saying that,
that's
like,
not
because it
okay.
seems like I'm saying that, like, a woman should be able to stop somebody from stealthing her by saying something, but then the response is, you think a woman should be able to stop somebody while they're raping her? Well, now I sound like a fucking lunatic. That's why I don't
Well,
like the application of the
okay.
word there.
So if a woman was being stealthed and she
Yes.
realized that in the
Mhm.
moment,
Mhm.
do we agree that some women would say something?
Yes, they should say something. Yes.
No. Would we agree that some women do say something?
Some I'm sure some women probably do, yeah?
Awesome. Do we think it's the majority?
I'm not sure, I don't know at this point.
Okay. So there's that case, and that will be good. Let's pretend that that stops the scenario, that that
Sure.
helps, that your advice works. Um, if women are not doing that, you think that they're not doing that because they were told by society that they shouldn't speak out because they might be like killed instead, and that's your theory?
That's some of them. It could be. It could be that some just aren't confident enough to bring it up. It could be that sex is awkward, and so you just don't say it. It could be for a variety of reasons. But I feel like
Okay.
the reason where men are portrayed as these violent, murdering creatures, if you say something, it could go really bad for you. That seems to be a growing perspective that I'm hearing.
Okay, awesome. But so I agree with you that that narrative is not very compelling to me. And earlier, I discussed with you about how I think that the reason why that rhetoric is used is because women just don't understand power dynamics. We're not explained that. So the stuff that I understand intuitively about being scared of men is something that I had to be explained to. Now I understand why I feel uncomfortable when I used to play fight with my ex and it would feel kind of icky even though I liked it. It's because I was constantly being reminded that he could grab me right now and do whatever the fuck he wants if he wanted to. And that's a very scary reality to live in, okay? So I understand that that rhetoric is problematic, but you also gave other reasons. And I don't think you sincerely think that women who don't call stealthing out are just thinking, this guy's gonna bash my head. He's gonna do it. That's why I can't say anything. No, it's probably awkwardness. It's probably trauma response. It's probably inexperience. It's probably a lot of things, a lot more
Sure, it
complex
could
than
be.
nuanced
There
things
might be other
that
things
won't be
like that.
solved by your shitty, crappy advice.
But there might be things that can be solved by waiting to have sex until you figured out at least some of those things that are external to the situation itself, okay? If it's a huge dude that's doing some
Why do
fucked
you
up
think
shit,
that?
why do I think that you shouldn't engage in sexual activity? What do you
No,
mean?
why do you think that like those things can be externally solved before sex?
Because if you're having like traumatic responses to things, that's something you work through in with therapy.
How?
I mean, it
Okay,
de it
so
depends on the type of response. But, like,
okay,
if you're trying to argue that there are some problems that are unfixable, I'm never going to agree with you that we
I will
just
never argue
shoot
that.
women off into the
That is
rape
not what
pits.
I'm arguing.
Okay, so, you're laughing, you're like, "Oh, how do you fix that?" I don't know how. I'm not a psychologist or a therapist, but there
Exactly.
are
So I'll
ways.
tell you. I can tell you because that's what I'm doing, right? Um, I think that you have a very poor understanding of mental health. I'm sorry, and trauma in general. I have a lot of sexual trauma. I agree that it would be very hard for a trauma survivor, or like any person with trauma, any trauma at all, to work through that alone. But at the end of the day, if I never engaged sexually with anyone anymore because I have issues, I could never fix my issues. Because part of what therapy is having corrective experiences. And
Sure,
that
this is
means when you
okay,
try
hold on.
to,
This is yeah, I
Mhm.
understand. This is obviously the answer, right? When
But
I'm
you didn't
saying
give it when I asked you.
because when I'm saying has the person worked through it, I don't mean are they 100% done with everything and they know for a fact that they are going to have a positive sexual experience, right? Part of that working through it process might be I've gone as far as I can in therapy and I've done as much as I can and the next step is to start having sex again. Obviously,
Yeah,
that would be a person that I would agree, yeah, they're probably ready for sex. This
yeah.
almost goes
But
without
you
saying,
never
of
said
course.
that at any point. You just said don't have sex. Do you know about this woman that you criticized? You don't know where she is in therapy. You don't know if she did therapy. But you assume that she's not emotionally mature enough to have sex, right? You don't know any of that. You just assume that. When your advice is if you can't do this, don't engage in sex in a casual
Learning
sex.
to do
That's
something
assuming a lot of
again,
things.
part of that is the therapy process.
Okay.
If I were to tell somebody, if you're deathly afraid of cars, then don't drive a car until you've worked through that fear. And then somebody's like, "Oh, I got you, Destiny. You're a dumb fuck." Because actually, part of working through that fear is going to
Is
therapy.
driving a car. Yeah.
Obviously, I would say, "Yeah, no shit." But it's not
Yeah,
just
except that
jumping
you
back at
never said it.
because because obviously that's part of what I mean when I say if you're not ready for it.
It's not obvious to anyone else besides you.
It
No one got that. There's
okay.
not a single person who understood that from anything you said.
I think that literally every single if somebody said, I've been going to therapy, I've talked these issues as much as I can, like I'm ready to go and try again, then obviously, yeah, well, you've
I
done your
dare
homework,
you
you've done.
do a response video and say that that's what you meant, and you'll see that everyone would be like, "You dumb fuck! You never fucking said anything like that. What the fuck are you talking about?"
Okay.
I wouldn't have said the things I said. I do think
Hold on. Wait. So then do you agree with all of the advice and every single thing I've said? If I change the one thing to don't have casual sex if you have to fix these things, unless you fixed as much as you can through the process of therapy and then you're ready to have sex again?
I think okay. I think you shouldn't be giving advice, but if that's the advice that you're giving, then I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
Okay.
I don't think you should give advice because I don't think women need your advice, especially because you're like, well, Katie, you're giving the basic of takes ever. And it's like, you didn't even say it. It's kind of like, okay, whatever. I don't think women engage in sex because they're interested in re traumatizing themselves and hurting themselves. And I can tell you that as a person who has done that, that I had like, you know the meme, like the implication? That happened to me. That was like a real thing. I said yes because I knew that if I said no, that wouldn't matter, right? So in that way, I didn't assert my agency. I knew that if I asserted my agency in that moment, it would be denied, and I didn't want to deal with that trauma. It was easier to conceptualize it as I gave my consent. Wait,
Sure, but if people don't go into these situations over and over again thinking, I'm going to hurt myself over and over again, it might be the case that people go in and they either one, they don't know that they can get help for these things. Two, they think they're normal. Every woman freezes up and sex just kind of sucks. There's a lot of women that just expect like sexual experience for women just kind of suck. It's just a thing you do to please men.
yeah.
Three, some women don't know that they could assert themselves more. Maybe they think, like, well, if a guy pushes for this, you kind of have to go along with it. Like, there's a lot of women that they don't go into it over and over again just to hurt themselves, but they do, and they keep doing it. There's a lot of people that go into relationships or experiences or
But there's
familial
a
things.
difference. There's a difference between going into it like hurting yourself, as in you're in a sexual engagement. So when I was with my ex, I was hurting myself a lot because we were sexually engaging. But that's not the same as like stealthing or being sexually assaulted in like the regular way that we talk about, right? And if you want to talk about just sexual engagement in that sense, I think that um, saying a basic advice like, hey, how about don't do things that hurt you? A lot of, if you can recognize that women agree to do a lot of things because they were socialized to please and because they have a hard time saying no, I don't see how that advice is helpful in any capacity except for making them feel stupid when they're
Because I
not
think
stupid.
sometimes because we all are stupid. A lot of people, guys are stupid for pushing too much. Women are stupid for sometimes letting it happen too much. I think we all make really dumb mistakes in a large amount of areas of our life. When people
Okay.
do like relationship stuff, most of the advice is stupid. You will get the same questions that need the same responses over and over and over again, but sometimes people just need to hear it. If I had $1 for every time somebody is like, Destiny, I'm in love with this girl, she won't date me, I'm still friends with her and it's destroying me, do you think we can still be friends? It is the most obvious answer in the world that it is impossible to, but people still need to hear, hey, don't do this. Hey, this is dumb. Like, I
I
think that's
think
part of the human experience of like, sometimes it's good to have somebody tell you, this is a dumb thing. Stop doing it or figure out how to fix it first before you keep doing it. I think sometimes there could be a lot of value in that, especially when it's a message we're so scared of saying it all in society because everybody thinks it's called a rape
I
apologist when you
think
do it.
it's I think it's tragic that there's a lot of good things that you're saying, um, and that they are contextual. I do think people hurt. I mean, we don't have to talk about hurt. Women think that they don't have to like orgasm at the end of the sex, right? Only the guy gets to come, and that's like a thing. You don't have to like assert yourself. You don't have to ask for that. Whatever. And we can say that we should teach women that that's something they can ask for, that they should ask for, that they deserve to ask for it, and all of that is true. I would have just really loved to discuss that, not with stealthing being the sexual interaction. So I was like,
Why can't we discuss it with every type of thing? Like
what do
with
you
that
mean
as
with
well.
everything? Because again, you and I place different value on what stealthing someone is. I think there's a so if I'm trying to engage with what you're saying, if a guy takes off the condom in the
Wait.
middle and then
Can I
a
ask hold on,
girl's
wait, before we do this,
Mhm.
like, wouldn't your advice there wouldn't somebody in my position say the same thing you're saying to me now? That like, it's of course women know they can orgasm. It's stupid to tell women that they should expect to orgasm. Couldn't somebody say that advice is similarly stupid? But it seems like
No,
people need to
that's
hear it.
affirming.
Wait,
So
how is it not affirming to tell somebody, hey, you can say no during a sexual encounter? You don't have to like I do. They're not gonna always murder you. Like, how is that not
okay.
affirming as well?
Well, let me answer. When a girl, when we give that scenario of like a guy takes off their condom in the middle of sex, if a girl doesn't say anything, I think something went with her that she wasn't capable of that in that moment. I don't know what it was. I don't have the answer for that. I don't think it really matters. I don't think me telling her you should have done that would help.
But all the
I'm
same
pretty
shit
sure
could
she
apply
knows
to
she should have done
orgasms
that.
too, though, no?
Orgasms is not the same as like reacting to someone actively breaching your boundaries,
I
right?
think they can be kind of similar. I think there's a lot of weird.
I think you think they can be similar because you attribute very little hurt to the concept of stealthing when it's like revealed to you in that way. I think it's like especially disturbing, and I know you're not Cherry, but like for the girl that you called a loser and a retarded child to then like be, oh, at the end I realized he wasn't wearing a condom, and she's now expected to like to report to the guy that he did something bad. It's like whatever. I know it's not your argument, but it was, you listen to that. It's literally degeneracy.
I
It's
don't think there's
retarded.
anything that crazy about expecting somebody to be able to communicate cases after like a sexual experience. I don't think that's
It's
that
because
outrageous.
you perceive that as a sexual experience, and I
Because
perceive it as rape.
yeah, but you yourself said that there can be accidental. Like, here's a question:
But that
if you
isn't
talk
accidental.
if
That
you
isn't
talk hold on
accidental. That's such.
if you talk to the guy, do you think the guy would say like, yeah, I'm a rapist? Or do you think the guy
That
would
doesn't
probably
matter.
okay, but if the guy doesn't perceive himself as being a rapist, but he's still pushing boundaries or breaking boundaries in a way that kind of makes him a rapist, but he doesn't perceive it as such, then don't you think communicating that experience to him like might make him maybe possibly rethink it in the future? Or at the very least he'll know, like,
So
okay, this is a
you
super
think
ultra shitty horrible thing to do.
the guy who doesn't look at himself as a rapist and is doing this thing is going to suddenly realize that they might have accidentally committed a rape if I told him that.
Or at the very least did a really shitty behavior. I think that it's really common there are a lot of
And he
guys that
didn't
do
know
shitty
that
things
before.
that they don't know the extent to how shitty it is. Yes.
Okay. So you're saying that if I called and I told him how broken he made my life, that would might help him further realize how much of a rapist he is, correct?
It's probably not gonna be an overnight thing, but it might be something that sticks with him where he's like, "Okay, fuck,
Okay.
fuck, this was too
So
much." Or, like, maybe in the
my
future, like, I'll just argue
my
for no consequence.
suggestion is
Maybe? Yeah.
my suggestion is instead of the victim of the assault having to like try to educate the person who in her experience raped her and robbed her of her agency, maybe a big shot streamer guy could be like, if you do that, you're a rapist.
We we're looping. We've already had those conversations. The conversation isn't from the guy's side right now, though. The conversation is from the girl's side. That was what this part of the conversation was about. We've argued from the guy's side a million fucking times that you shouldn't do this shit.
No, we didn't, right? Because you're like, I did everything I can with the guy's side. I know the guy's side is going to do X, Y, and Z. I try to
No,
explain to them
it's you
better. At
just
the end of the
no.
day, they're
Hold on.
going
No,
to
no, no,
be
no,
how
no. Hold
they
on. I got
are.
it. Okay. When you're giving advice to one side, you're fundamentally going to be looking out for that side as much as possible. So when I'm talking to men about how to engage sexual situations, what I say is you almost do treat women like retarded children. You need to verbalize a lot during sex, make sure that they're comfortable. You need to be looking for like enthusiastic consent. You can't really just go by them saying yes or no, even really. You kind of have to look a little bit more into it. You should be
See, but
offering
I
them a
hate
safe
that
and
advice.
I don't give a fuck. It's good advice, okay?
It's awful.
Which part of it is awful?
I think it like requires a lot from the guy where
It
the
does,
woman
but when
should
I'm giving
be
okay,
doing
that's
more.
great. I'm glad. You know what? I'm glad you think that. Okay, it does require a lot of advice on the side of the guy. But when I'm giving
Yeah.
advice to men, I expect a lot of them. There's a ton of advice that I give from the guys in terms of ensuring a safe environment and ensuring that you conduct yourself in a way. Maybe it's too much, but it's a lot. And I will say that I would say like every single part of this interaction is fully within your control. But if I'm giving advice on the other side, on the woman's side, I'm going to be just as big on the woman's side of it. Don't let guys take you to creepy places. If you're meeting a guy on a first date, don't meet him at his fucking apartment. Don't ever tell a guy where the fuck you live, ever. Don't ever take a guy back to your place. Don't let a guy pick you up on a first date in his car. Don't let a guy take you to a strange area that you're not familiar with. Tell a friend where you're going. Right? When I'm on the woman's side, I'm saying all of these things from the woman's end. Assume that every guy you're meeting is a rapist, and your goal is to not get raped by the end of the night. That's just how those conversations go, though. When you're giving advice for people about how to function, otherwise, if you're saying, "Here's the advice I'm going to give you," assuming the other guy's a perfectly good guy, you'd be like, "Well, I don't need any advice. He's a perfectly good guy." But that's how advice works.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure thing.
Because you're operating from like the perspective of this is just how reality is, then it wouldn't matter to you if I now pointed out things that you already know about how your advice to guys is like better ways they could operate on. And for women, it's going to be more ways in which they can prevent or avoid or withdraw or like not do. So the guy has to do a lot of things and have to be very proactive, and the woman has to be like reactive.
Reactive.
She has to
Well,
not.
ideally proactive in another way
Well,
to anticipate
she's
his actions. Yeah,
passive.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I,
Not passive. She's active. She is the controller of her own fate. You have a
well,
lot
the
of
thing
agency.
is,
Uh-huh.
my point is, she needs to be passive because hopefully we would want to be in an equal society, right? And this is where you'll say, but this is what reality is. But let me just for a second, like, describe utopia, right? Let's say we are in a place where the world actually makes sense, and women don't have to regulate where they walk and how they walk. And like, if a guy can go to a girl's apartment and they have that privilege because they're physically bigger, then maybe women would like to not have to worry about that. And I think a world can exist where men can be physically superior on average to women and that not matter. But I
Okay,
don't
but
think that world can exist if women are only asked to constantly withdraw and manage their behavior in a
no,
way that restricts their rights and their
it's not
freedoms.
restricting it. That world may never exist. If it is going to exist, it's probably
That's
not going to be in our
true.
lifetimes. This has been
That's
like the
true.
sexual dynamics of our species for since the start of civilization 10,000 years
I
ago, and
agree
since
with you. I'm not
so
saying it will
when I'm giving
necessarily happen. I'm saying I'm going to work
Sure.
for it.
Sure, and we should work for it by telling both people, because if every single man followed my advice, it wouldn't matter if women listened to anything I said. They could ignore everything because men wouldn't be rapey. They'd be verbally checking in. They'd be making sure that the woman is like super into things. They'd be ensuring her safety, right? So women would need to do it. But if women listen to
Not
my
after
advice, then
your
it
take
wouldn't.
on this panel.
What?
Not after your take on this panel,
This
they
panel
won't.
was not about male behavior. It was about female behavior. And you seem allergic to any type of criticism or advice relating to women's behavior in sexual relationships. This is the whole problem.
But you know that's not true.
Then why do you have so much of a problem with me saying women should be able to do these things?
Because the context in which you expect them to do these things is unreasonable.
The what? Why? How? How is it
It's kind of
unreasonable to
like,
tell somebody to verbally assert a boundary? This is the only time it matters. Your agency doesn't matter when the guy is respecting your agency. The time that it matters is when he's trying to disrespect it. That's the most important time to assert yourself. It's the only
yes,
time it matters.
yes, but I know you understand like power dynamics, right? And I know you understand what punching up is. I know you know all these things, right? So it seems silly to me to have to like woman-splain to you that maybe criticism about women is not going to go over the same it will about men. It makes
Then
sense
fuck
to
the
me.
people that make that act like that, because you should be able to give advice on both ends without it turning into a huge victim blaming shit show. And when somebody
I
tweets
think
out some
I
shit like
think
I
it
got
could have
scalped
been
3 or
that.
4 times and I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to have more casual sex tomorrow, that's a pretty harmful message.
I
Maybe we
think
should take a step back and say maybe it's not good to encourage these types of
I
people to
think
keep
it
throwing
could have
themselves into
been
sexual
like that.
relationships.
I think it could have been like that. I don't think it could have been like that with what you chose to respond to. I can tell you just personally, like watching like the Hanzo Vakir guy, like read out that tweet about her being raped harder, and then seeing you laugh was
It's
it was devastating. It was it was not a nice moment.
it's such a
Um,
like these are hard conversations, and I'm not going to let these conversations be held hostage by trauma responses. You do
They're not
everybody a
help.
disservice. That's
They're not.
exactly what you're doing. When
No.
somebody says you can verbally assert a boundary, and somebody says, well, when I said no, I just got raped harder, that's bullshit. You are
Can I
actively,
finish my
no,
argument?
no, you can't, because now I'm responding. You are harming the discourse by putting out a message like that, because you're essentially saying women are powerless, and if a guy is raping you and you say no, he's gonna rape you harder. This is my 4th rape, I know by now. That's
That's not what she said.
outrageous. That is exactly what she implied.
Okay. Do you think that if this woman has trauma because she was violently raped, the bad rape, not the accidental rape, um, she might now struggle to exert her agency? We understand that,
It's
right?
possible, yeah.
Okay, so let's say this woman is horribly traumatized and scarred, right? She's not contaminating the discourse by having trauma responses, right?
By having them publicly, you are. This is why trauma responses should be a private thing, either between close friends or a therapist. Trauma
Can I
responses
ask you a
are,
question?
go for it. Responses are by definition irrational, generally. Well, they're irrational in that, like, we don't generally want trauma responses because we're responding to something in a way that we don't usually want to. That's why it's a traumatic response.
I
But
know
when
what a
we air
trauma response is.
Sure. When we air those traumatic responses publicly, in a way, you're sort of reinforcing that those traumatic responses can be okay. And that's what's happened largely with women and men, where a woman will be public about her traumatic response to a male. And it seems like there's a lot of responses like, yeah, all men are kind of rapists, or yeah, a lot of men are. Instead of realizing, okay, your trauma response is obviously traumatic, but like we need to work through it. We're reinforcing these trauma responses online by making them seem valid, which they're not. They're by definition irrational and hopefully solvable.
Okay. So I think what you're trying to do is you're trying to help and you're just very bad at it. Okay.
No, hold
So
on. I don't care about helping. I'm not trying to help. I try to give good advice to my audience over this shit. If I wanted to be a therapist to somebody, I can have those conversations. That's not what I'm trying to do. Most people on Twitter are fucking assholes. I don't believe half the shit anybody says.
if
That's
that's
my
not
goal
what
isn't to
you're
help
trying
that
to
person.
do.
Yeah, my goal is to have good
Okay.
conversations with my audience. I think that my audience understands what I'm saying, and I think some people that listen to these conversations in the middle understand what I'm saying. My goal is
If
not to give
your
advice to that
if
particular
your
person on Twitter, though.
audience understands what you're saying, that your audience is learning that trauma responses are irrational and should be disregarded because they're unhelpful to
I didn't
discourse.
say they should be disregarded, but they absolutely should not be reinforced. Reinforcing a
What do
trauma
you
response
mean by
is abuse,
reinforced?
as in pretending that a person's trauma response is okay or should be furthered, or that we need to make large accommodations for that person. A trauma
Why do
response
you
is
think that?
because when you see a trauma response and somebody goes, yeah, it's like soy, all men are horrible. Yeah, a lot of men are rapists, blah, 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 blah. You're that person that originally was having a traumatic response. Now she's getting external reinforcement. Like, yeah, fuck, it's not just trauma, actually. All men are rapists. Like, yeah, actually, a lot of men. Yeah, this is
That's
actually
a
true.
very weird conceptualization of what's happening.
That is
Um,
exact. Not only is this what is happening, there have been a myriad of psychology. We fucking read a whole paper on this a couple weeks ago about how damaging it is that a lot of the mental health shit online has been romanticized so much, and that all of these traumatic behaviors are just being reinforced and accommodated and reinforced and accommodated. And our understanding of mental health and our conversation about it publicly are worse than they were 20 years ago when we demonized it. It's gone overboard in the other direction, where it's been romanticized such that mental illness is now a goal for some people because it's like a flag of honor they wear without even understanding it or trying to
do
work through
you
it.
do you realize that you sound like a fucking conservative right now
5
talking
years
about
ago?
how communism,
Yeah,
like,
it sucks, but unfortunately, that's where we've gotten to. Yeah. 10 or
no,
15
that's
years
what
ago,
you think we've
no,
gotten
it
to.
is absolutely where we got to. 15
You
years
are the
ago,
one who came on panel and told us that we're all losers living online. When I make my criticism, I
wait,
know
hold
that
on, I
most
live
people are
online. What do
not
you mean by
losers
that?
online. They're not losers online. They're outside in the real world when mental health is still being demonized, where women are being told to not speak up, when there is bad, bad social repercussions to being sexually assaulted as a victim. Okay, if you're going to talk about online Twitter triggers me because everybody uses their mental health disorder as a badge of honor, fine, but that's not the real world and you
I
know that.
Yeah, that was my argument 2 to 3 years ago, but it doesn't seem to be the case. It seems like the stuff
Then
that's
you're
going
wrong.
on Twitter, no, I don't think so. If it's gotten to the point to where other psychologists are writing papers about it now, like what percentage of the real world has like a Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram account? It's probably like 70, 80% plus. We can't just continue to ignore all of the conversations that happen online while we also see these things playing out in large scale across college campuses and then say like, oh, well, it's just all online, lol, soy, soy, soy. It's not real. Obviously it is real and it's
That's
having
not
a
what I'm
larger
saying.
impact. That is absolutely what is happening.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is what you see online. And so if somebody comes and they're having, I don't think the girl that you retweeted the retweet to, I don't think she had a trauma response. I think she shared something. And there was nothing wrong with that. Not
The part that sounded weird was when somebody said a rapey thing happened in the 3 times, but they didn't say anything because it was awkward. That's a stupid thing to say. If it's too awkward to say something, then maybe you shouldn't be having casual sex, which was Mindwave's original retweet, which I agree with 100%. And I think even you, in a roundabout way, in some parts of this, almost agreed with that. That if you can't verbalize something in an encounter like that, that maybe you probably should
No, I
wait.
would never say that because she was stealthed, and that's different. You know that. We had this discussion like
Wait,
500
hold on.
times.
Let me just, so that I'm clear. My question was, now there's other stuff that came out afterwards, but that wasn't relevant because people were already defending what was being tweeted right then. If a girl told you that if she saw a guy stealthing her in a sexual encounter, she wouldn't be able to say anything. She would just freeze up and let it happen. Would you tell that girl that it's okay for her to just go out and pursue sexual relationships and just hope that that doesn't happen?
As a person that sometimes freezes and sometimes doesn't, I understand that freezing is not a always or never type of a thing. It's very contextual and very um incident dependent.
So you
Sometimes
would
you
tell her
freeze
to
up,
just, so
sometimes you
you would
don't.
tell her to just go out and have fun and good luck.
Is she an adult who's capable of making decisions?
Yeah.
Then I would stay out of her business unless she wants my advice. And if
She's
she
coming
wanted
to
my
you for
advice,
advice. Obviously, that's the hypothetical. What this is like, let's say a guy asks you for this and you're like, well, is he an adult? Well, I would mind my own business. That's not an answer to the hypothetical. Come on.
okay, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Um, so she comes for me to advice. I would tell her, "Do you know why you freeze?" And then we would
And
talk
she
about
said,
it.
and then she says, you know what? I don't know. When I'm in sexual relationships, sometimes, like, if I see a guy stealthing me and he's disrespecting my boundaries, I freeze up.
Then that sounds like there's something holding you back from being able to talk about it, and that would probably lead to you having more of those experiences. So I think you should explore with yourself what you think leads to those like freeze ups.
Okay, I have a Tinder date with a guy tonight. Are you saying I shouldn't go on that, or should I do therapy first, or can I just try this and see what happens?
Well, do you want to have sex with that person?
I don't know, maybe.
Well, then when you know if you want to have sex with them or not, then that would be the decision that you make, right? You're an
Well, but I'm
adult.
asking you, like, do you think it's a good idea to go out on this Tinder date and fuck this guy if I think I freeze up a lot when they push too hard on my boundaries and get rapey?
Does it Would you prefer to have the sex even though that might be the consequence?
Probably not. I don't like getting raped.
If you don't like getting raped, then you probably shouldn't have sex with them.
Okay, isn't this is not just what I've been saying the whole time?
No, it's a lot more nuanced.
Okay. I
A
need to
lot
sleep.
more.
I don't know what part of you said you were Canadian. I have to sleep. It's 12:44. It's late
I'm
for
not
me.
Canadian. It's 7:35 a.m. for me. Fuck you.
Okay. All right, well listen. Thank you for the conversation. Have fun, stay safe.
Fine.
Yep, have fun. Good night, bye.
She's Israeli, so yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you're confusing me with erudite.
I'm not confusing it anyway. I just didn't know where the fuck you were from. Okay, chill. Okay. Bye.
Bye. Well, that was the thing.